This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome to the newest show on Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I'm your host, Shea, host of the Monday Mashup. I'm sure you've heard me over there. Bringing you the newest for Detroit Sports Podcast, Wanna Bet. We are talking sports gambling, newly legalized in so much of the nation. The show, of course, inspired by my recent trip to fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada for the opening weekend of March Madness, one of the biggest betting weekends of the year. Just a great trip. Had a bunch of fun time with my buddies. Went for my bachelor party, getting married in the fall. So it was just a really, really exciting trip to go out there, kind of on my bucket list, to get out for March Madness, to just spend a weekend watching the biggest weekend of basketball of the entire year and do a little, put a little action on it. And I did not, full disclosure, did not come home up money, but I had a blast. I had a really good time. I hit a couple really good bets. I got fucked on a couple bets that I thought were pretty good. So we'll get into that. I had a great experience at the Westgate Superbook. Really one of the coolest places I've ever been able to watch games. The environment, the atmosphere was unbelievable. I totally recommend it if it's on your list of things to do at all. And for a lot of sports fans, I feel like it is. If you're interested at all, or you're thinking at all about getting out to Las Vegas for March Madness, or I don't know, for NFL divisional weekend, any of those types of events, it's really worth your while to get out there and do that, because again, it was one of the better weekends of my life, and had a great time getting all my friends out there. We stayed on the Strip, Park MGM Grand, and it was a beautiful hotel. Limited sleep, to be honest. I'm still recovering from the weekend. We took the red eye home. I did some math. I slept the 4 days that I was there. I slept a total of 10 and a half hours. But that's Vegas. And again, it was one of the better weekends of my life, as a gambler, and it's something I enjoy. And I don't do a ton of it when I'm home in Detroit. I don't go to the downtown casinos all that often. I'll go every once in a while, but it is once in a while. I do dabble a little bit with sports betting when I'm at home, but nothing like what I was doing in Vegas. And I know a lot of other people do, and I've thought that on Detroit Sports Podcast, we kind of just needed a show that gave you picks. Talked about some of the games that are coming up, talked about some of the games that happened, some of the best bets, some of the worst bets. And so I kind of wanted a place to do that, and Wanna Bet seems like the perfect show for it. And the guys over at DSP decided I was the guy to run this thing, so here we are. But yeah, so before we get going, I just have a word from our sponsors. Wanna Bet is always brought to you by MyBookie, mybookie.ag. It is the perfect home for your March Madness fun. They have something for everyone, whether you like filling out a bracket, picking a national champion, predicting first-round upsets, or all of the above, or if you're a multiple bracket guy, MyBookie has something for you. They've been in business for years. I've been using MyBookie for years. The best part is they pay out fast when you win. I'm talking 48 hours fast. You win a game, you got money in your bank account 2 days later. I've been using it for years. I've been having just an incredible experience with it. MyBookie.ag, and we're even going to give you a bonus. When you go to MyBookie.ag and deposit money with promo code DSP, you will get a 50% deposit bonus. That is promo code DSP, and they will double the money you put in up to $1,000. With MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid. All right, talking about Vegas, talking about the Westgate Sportsbook. All right, let me put it this way. We did not have an opportunity to reserve the booth-style seating in the Superbook itself. That seating, and again, I don't know how much the pricing runs if you do want to reserve something like that, but if you are heading out to Vegas, if you're thinking, man, next year I really want to get out there for March Madness, it seems like all these guys that do it just have a great time. Absolutely, get on it a little earlier than we did and see if you can get yourself one of those booth styles, some of that booth style seating reserved for the weekend, because the people I saw in those seats, they never even left. I don't think they saw sun. I think they just spent the entire time watching basketball. But I can give you an affordable option that absolutely will not break the bank that we did. And it was the best deal, I think, in the city for the weekend. It was $25 a person. You get a reserved seat in the Westgate's Manilow Theater, and we were able to just sit down in that theater. They had all of the games on the big screen. There's screens off to the side where they had other games on, and it's right next to the sports book. Best thing about it, even, you could walk outside. They had a satellite betting area, so it's not like you had to go all the way over to the Superbook. You could just exit the theater. There's a satellite betting kiosk. You could go up there, place whatever bets you had on whatever games, head back into the theater, stadium-style seating, and you could watch all the games. That was my favorite experience of the weekend by far. It was just an incredible way to watch games. But again, being in Vegas, anywhere we went, it was people with bet slips, people throwing wild amounts of money around, people watching all of these games, freaking, like, there was nowhere you could go where the atmosphere wasn't basketball related and wasn't incredible. We were sitting outside watching outside of a bar right by T-Mobile Arena where the Las Vegas Golden Knights play, and we were watching Wisconsin and Tennessee, or not Wisconsin, excuse me, the Tennessee game against Colgate. This game, one of the ones that absolutely fucked me, and the reason why, we're sitting out there watching. I'm watching the game. My dad and I had the under on 146.5 was the total points for the game. And with, I think, like 8 seconds left, Colgate down 147, 137. We look at it. We're like, this is good we're great. We're in the under. Let's go. Colgate grabs the ball, comes down the floor, tosses up a prayer, banks a fucking 3 in for 147. We lost the under by half a point. And everybody yells, life's too short to bet the under. Why would you bet for a bad basketball game? I just thought it was one of those games. Tennessee might go out, beat them 77 to 50 or something. 70, the way Michigan State did to Minnesota. And I nailed that game. But I figured that was the way it was going to be. And that number, 146.5, it just seemed huge to me. So I took the under on it, and at the end of that game, 8 seconds left, banked a 3 in. That was a bet I got absolutely fucked. Another one I got drilled. I took Wisconsin laying 2 points against Oregon in the first game of the weekend because I'm an idiot. And despite all of the Wisconsin basketball I watched this year, I fooled myself into thinking somehow they'd be able to score. I fooled myself into thinking that Oregon, without Bol, their season went way downhill when they lost Bol early in the year. I just had a feeling that they weren't going to be able to go the distance. They weren't going to be able to kind of compete with that Big Ten style of defense. And guess what? I got drilled. Those were two of my worst bets of the weekend. Now, again, the Tennessee Colgate bet wasn't a terrible bet because this is one of those situations where you look at these numbers that Vegas puts out and you're like, these guys fucking know something. Because how in the world, like, this was more often than not the case that the over-under would be 146.5 and the total point score would be 147. Or it was in the case of the Virginia and Gardner-Webb game. I took the over and I think it was like 116 and it ended up being like 114.5 or 115. And I was like sitting here, I'm going, did I really just lose two totals by a total combined spread of 2.5 points? And I really did. And that's where I'm like, these guys in Vegas know what the fuck they're talking about. And I think now that I'm looking back, I think Virginia Gardner-Webb was 115, and it came out to a total of 113 at the end of the game. And then I had just lost Tennessee Colgate by half a point. So yeah, in the span of about 10 minutes, I lost two games by a total spread of 2.5 points. That was absolutely brutal for me. Best bet of the weekend, and again, this was one that I just absolutely drilled. It was Michigan State minus 10.5 and the under on 139.5. I took a two-way parlay on them. What that means, both of them have to hit, and both of them did. Pretty large payout. It was just, to me, it was such a lock. Michigan State had already beaten up on Minnesota earlier in the season. I thought Minnesota, kind of coming off that first round upset of Louisville, emotional for Rich Pitino to beat Louisville in the way that he did, coming off that upset, coming up against a team that they're familiar with, that already gave him a spanking earlier in the season. And I looked at the score of that, the earlier season spanking, it was like 77-59. I was like, this is the type of game that I could see Michigan State's going to win 70, 50, 60, 75, 55 in that range, where it's going to, we're not hitting 140 points. And Michigan State's also definitely going to clear that 10.5 point spread. I just was really confident in it. And I was sitting there watching the game. Early in the game, Matt McQuaid, like running the floor, had an opportunity, dunked the ball. I'm like, Minnesota's letting Matt McQuaid run the floor, dunk the ball. There's no chance that they're covering 10.5. And sure enough, I mean, Nick Ward was playing bully ball down low. Cassius Winston was hitting acrobatic layups. There were a couple of punches Minnesota threw that Michigan State just had to weather. And at the end of the day, it was not competitive. Michigan State took that one home 70-50. And I felt vindicated because after a weekend of a few games that just killed me, I was able to kind of recover a little bit by having that 70-50 type game and just absolutely getting a prediction 100% right. But again, Vegas, March Madness, you're never more than 15 feet from a blackjack table. And believe me, as much as fun as it is to watch all these games, to watch all this basketball, there are times where you got to just go for a walk. And I did. And again, like you're in Vegas. You go for a walk, you go out into the casino floor, you sit down, play a couple hands of blackjack, get a drink. You're never far away from something else to do. And that's what I found just really, really fun about this weekend was I was never bored. No matter what was going on, there was never a moment when I was bored. But I do want to also dive into next weekend for March Madness, the Sweet 16. Mostly, I think on this, I'm going to stick to sort of the picks that I like to make. And I'm a big NBA guy, big NFL guy. You know, I have a couple futures out for the March Madness, the tournament. I have, Michigan State. I think it was like plus 150 to get out of the East. And then I have Kentucky plus 1,200 to win the whole thing. I just thought, if you're getting 120, if you're getting $1,200 for every 100 that you're betting, then that's a pretty easy deal for me, especially when it's a team like Kentucky that's played so well down the stretch of the season and has looked really, really dominant. Like people were saying a lock for a 1 seed, and then getting PJ Washington back potentially. I think that's a team that really could turn it on and win the tournament. So I took a flyer on them. Michigan State as well. Just to get out of the East, I think I'm kind of in a place now where I saw Duke looked very beatable against a UCF team that ran kind of that funky zone. I think Duke is in for a little bit of a trial here against Virginia Tech. And again, I want to get into the Sweet 16. If there's a game that I absolutely think is just sort of a lock, it's Virginia Tech and Duke. And I'm taking Virginia Tech getting 7.5 points. I just think the way that Virginia Tech plays, first of all, Virginia Tech beat Duke at the end of February. They're not going to be afraid. And that's kind of the biggest thing. I had Rico on the Monday mashup. Rico Beard came on and he said, if you're going to beat Duke, you have to get over that intimidation factor, because you have to get over oh my God, it's Zion. You have to get over the fact that you're going up against this team with these 3 highly doubted freshmen. You're going up against Zion Williamson. You're going up against Coach K. You're going up against Duke. You got to get past all of that intimidation and just kind of play your game. And for me, like having that win on Duke already, Virginia Tech does. The end of February, end of the regular season, Virginia Tech went and beat them. I know they didn't have Zion Williamson, but again, they won't be scared. And that's huge when it comes to playing Duke. The other thing is we kind of saw a little bit of a blueprint when it comes to playing Duke by what UCF did. They stuck to their zone. They forced Duke to shoot threes. Duke had one of their best shooting days of the entire year. They're a 30% from the field team usually. And against UCF, it was just a completely different team, shooting 10 of 25 from the field, or from 3, excuse me. I don't think this is a team, Duke, that's going to shoot 40% very often when you're forcing them to shoot the three. That's something Virginia Tech's going to do. And it's like Cam Reddish going 3 for 4 from deep. That's not usually the night he has. Zion Williamson is 3 of 7 from 3. If Zion's shooting 7 threes, I'm going to live with that. And it's like, look at Trey Jones, 1 of 8. And I mean, we're talking about a Virginia Tech team here that they understand going to a short rotation. They've done it against Duke already this year, where they've gone just a really, really tight rotation and just lessen the number of guys on the floor. They play that zone. Buzz Williams, they're calling him the Duke Slayer. They play that zone where they're going to force Duke into shooting a lot of three-point shots. And I think that they kind of have that blueprint where I don't know that they're going to beat them. I think they're absolutely covering plus 7.5. I can't see a situation where Duke puts 8 points on this team because, again, they're going to be forced to shoot from 3. I don't see Duke going 10 of 25 again. And certainly, you might be able to do it against UCF, but when you go up against another ACC team that really might be underseeded, yeah, it's going to be a lot more difficult. Like, they're going to play a better style of defense. They're going to play a better brand of basketball. They're just going to be better than what UCF offered you. And so that's where I look at this team. And again, here's Virginia Tech in the first time that they played Duke. And yeah, Duke didn't have Zion, but I look at this and Kerry Blackshear, 40 minutes. Outlaw, 28 minutes. Hill, 37, 32, 40. You have 2 guys play every minute of the game. And I look at their bench. It's 3 guys coming off. PJ Horn and Kabongo only played 6 minutes combined. So we're really talking about a 6-man rotation. This is a team that understands, it's players who understand what's needed from them. It's players who are willing to give that to their coach, Buzz Williams. I think this, calling him the Duke Slayer might be a stretch. I don't know that he beats Duke. I do know that they cover. And it's my lock of the Sweet 16. I don't think there's a chance that Virginia Tech is going to lose by 8 points. I think it's just 7.5. The number's too big for me. And that's where I look at it. It's my lock of Sweet 16. A couple other ones. Michigan, Texas Tech. Michigan laying 1.5. Kind of a stay away for me. If I were going to bet this, though, I would put Texas Tech on the money line. I think this is another one where Michigan's shooting, is a little streaky. Texas Tech could kind of take advantage of that. I mean, even you look at ESPN's BPI predictor, Texas Tech's 51.3% to win this game. And I look at it and I go, Michigan in the second half of games kind of fades. Ignas Brazdeikis, as good as he's been all year, fades a little bit in the second half of games. That's maybe a youth thing. And Beeline's been saying all week, Michigan's got younger guys. Texas Tech does not. Texas Tech has experience on their side of the floor. Texas Tech is going to be a team that's going to – they're really good defensively. And I think it's kind of one of those situations where if I were going to bet this game, I would definitely take Texas Tech straight up to win it. I think it's one of those situations where, yeah, if Michigan's going to lose before the Final Four, this is the game. If they end up going another round and getting Gonzaga, I think, Michigan could beat Gonzaga. And then moving on to that game, Gonzaga and Florida State, this is another number that just looks too big to me, and I might be fine with betting this as well, and it's Gonzaga plus 7.5. Florida State's a really good basketball team. Florida State's a team that's been slept on all season by a lot of people, whether you watch the ACC or not, whether you're a national broadcaster or not. Florida State has not been talked about because they occupy the same airspace as Duke and North Carolina. Florida State but deserves to be in that conversation. Getting 7.5 points against Gonzaga feels like a no-brainer to me. Again, this is kind of similar to Duke and Virginia Tech in that I don't know that Florida State is going to beat Gonzaga, but I think they're covering 7.5. I mean, I saw what Florida State did to Murray State, and Ja Morant looked incredible in that game against Marquette. Marquette's another really good team with a really good player in Marcus Howard. Ja Morant looked incredible against him. Murray State looked incredible against him, and they moved on. And it wasn't even close. And then they go up against Florida State, and it was like they ran into a buzzsaw. And that's where I look at this Gonzaga-Florida State game. And Gonzaga, didn't cover against Baylor. And I get a little worried. I look at Florida State. Yeah, I think they're covering 7.5. The other games this week, Purdue, Tennessee, I'm not touching that game with a 10-foot pole. It's Rick Barnes versus Matt Painter, 2 guys who just routinely cannot get the fuck out of the Sweet 16. That game scares the living daylights out of me. I think we're looking at something where, yeah, Matt Painter and Rick Barnes are going to find out who can lose this game worse. These are two guys who their teams just choke in this exact situation every single year. There's no way that I'm touching this game. Virginia, Oregon. Virginia laying 8.5. I think that Oregon's a nice run, but again, this tournament's been so chalky. Like, they're the only double-digit seed in the Sweet 16. They're the only seed lower than a 5 in the Sweet 16, Oregon being a 12. And I just think laying 8.5, that feels right for Virginia. If you want to bet that game, maybe take a flyer Oregon money line, but I think I would just take Virginia laying the points. It seems to me like this is where Oregon's had a nice run so far. They're running into that buzzsaw in Virginia, and that's curtains for them. Michigan State and LSU. Michigan State laying 6. Again, this is a stay away. I know Michigan State struggles to cover the spread. LSU has really surprised me with how well they've played without their head coach. One thing to keep an eye on, though, with the spread being where it is LSU may get out and run in the first half. They may go up big in the first half, and you might start looking at this and going, let me get some second half action. If you're one of those guys, you might start looking at this game and going, let me get a little second half action. Let's take LSU to cover this game. Don't fall for it. I don't know that Michigan State's going to be able to come back and cover 6 if they go down early in the first half. But I can tell you one thing. Since Will Wade got suspended at LSU, since LSU hasn't had their head coach, in the second half of games, they're being outscored 190 to 152. Yeah, let that sink in. Even though they're 3-1, they're being outscored by 40 points in second halves. What does Michigan State do really well? Run in the second half. This is a game to me, if Michigan State will win this game. I don't know that they're covering 6 points, but it's an absolute lock that they're going to win this game. Looking at Auburn, North Carolina laying 5. If I'm betting that game, I'm taking North Carolina and I'm laying the points. I think it's just, to me, Auburn, again, it's a nice run, but the way this tournament has gone with all the chalk, I just think the best teams are the best teams, and there's a reason for it. And then Houston and Kentucky in the scumbag coaching battle of the year, as Kevin McCann so nicely put it on the Monday Mashup this week. Kentucky laying 3. I think this game's funny. It's a battle of the copycat logos. Houston, the Cougars, and the Wildcats. 2 cats, and you've got Houston, whose logo looks exactly the same as Kentucky's, except it's red and it's a K instead of an H. Kentucky laying 3 points. Again, this one's probably a stay away for me as far as the spread goes. I like Kentucky to win it. I like Kentucky to move on. But Houston, they've done nothing but win all year. 33-3. No matter what conference you get in, you don't get to 33-3 for no reason. You don't get to 33-3 by playing scrubs. You get to 33-3 by being a really good basketball team. And so that's my thing with this game, is just I don't know that Kentucky's going to cover 3. Speaking of Kentucky, one of kind of where I will end is one of the last just really electric moments in Vegas. There was video of it on the Action Network's Twitter account when Kentucky covered 5.5 against Wofford. And I was pissed because I had Wofford to cover 5.5. I saw what they did in the first round. They shot the lights out from deep. It was that kid, the leading 3, his name escapes me at the moment, but he is the most 3-pointers in the history of college basketball, plays for Wofford, and I think it was McGee, and he just decided that he was going to go out there and go 0 for 12 from deep against Kentucky, and because of that, Kentucky was able to win by 6, covering a 5.5 point spread. That was probably the most electric moment of the entire weekend. Everyone in the Westbrook, everybody in the Westgate stood up, shouted, was screaming like a massive party, throwing shit. It was so electric to be there right when that game ended with Kentucky covering the spread. I would have been much happier had Wofford been able to cover, but I found out that there was actually a bet. It was $120,000 was placed on Kentucky to cover 5.5. Wherever that guy was, I'm sure he was shitting his pants at the end of that game, because it got hairy. No, Wolford was down like 4 points with 40-some seconds left. That game got very, very close. So to have a $150,000 bet, I mean, everybody in that book had big money on Kentucky because I could just tell the way that book exploded when Kentucky covered 5.5. So that was a really electric moment. And again, if you have an opportunity, get to Vegas for March Madness. It was incredible. That's kind of the preview of Wanna Bet. Maybe a little more structure in the future, as I'm not still recovering from a trip to Las Vegas, and I can bring a little more information to you. Some more NBA picks, maybe baseball for sure during the summer. Some NFL futures coming as well. But looking forward to getting like college football futures out. There's a couple episodes I want to do coming up about over-under win totals for the college football season, and some things like that. Looking forward to doing this every week. Getting excited about all of the things coming this summer. The NBA playoffs, we can put some bets on that as well. Remember, if you're gambling, to be responsible betting on sports, bet only within your means, and use mybookie.ag, deposit code DSP. We're giving you 50% of your deposit as a bonus, up to $1,000. And have a great week, guys.